And welcome to the Confound Millennial, starring Steven Stirvin Michaels and featuring not Ryan Diamonds as usual. It's a little early in the day for him at the time of this recording, but fear not, we've got my old friend, Mike Fisher, host of the StreetExit Chronicles podcast.
Well, good morning. How are you, old friend?
I'm good. How about you? It has been a while, Mike.
I was thinking about that recently when you asked me to come on to your show. I said, I think that we initially met. You were kind of a wee bit of a youngin' then, and this would probably been, 10, 12 years ago. And then we reconnected probably about 8 years ago when you were taking some guitar lessons, and I was too in the same location.
Mm-hmm. It's
How'd that
been
go for you?
uh I can kind of play. I'm enough to be that jerkwad with the guitar at the campfire that knows three songs.
But you do a hell of a job with those three songs, right?
Oh, absolutely not. I once I started podcasting, almost everything else took a back seat because I loved this so much.
Well,
Um,
as I'm listening to you, and we'll just be fully transparent. I've not heard your podcast before, and you got quite the voice for radio here.
Thank you, thank you. I hear I got the face for it too.
Oh, it's killer. I
but
don't know if your guest can see your mustache, but I'm telling you, that's a work of art right there.
Thank you. It takes years of dedication. I grew it myself,
Attaboy.
all that good stuff. But I actually last year had an episode with the several members of the Headwaters community.
Is that right?
Um, yes, I had, they were doing, I forget how many years, but they were doing a reunion show. And I had Lisa Mount, Roger Williams, Jerry Grillo, and a few others. And I had thought about reaching out to you, but you had so much going on with the outreach that you do. I figured go with the people I had. I'd had enough time to fill it out. But how many? We'll get into the street exit stuff soon. I just, a little bit of catch up. How many years were you in Headwaters? And how many were we in it together?
I think you and I were in 2 or 3 years at least together. I personally was in it, I want to say 5 or 6 years. And it was one of the best experiences that I've ever personally had. It gave me a great time of growth and opportunity and gave me some footing and foundation to kind of find my own way in theater of all things, which I had no background, nor interest, nor even consideration in prior to my exposure to Headwaters. And since have been able to be a part of a number of projects and programs around the region, and even some paid gigs. So it's kind of a fun little thing that's come of that, and got to meet some of the most interesting and charming and people since I moved to North Georgia through Headwaters.
Oh wow. It helped me figure out, for a long time I thought that my calling in life was to be an actor. And maybe it still is. I got a lot of life left.
Sure.
But definitely it helped me find the entertainment is a little niche that I like to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, great cast and crew around there. A lot of lifetime friends, whether I talk to them daily or not. You know, once I once I had the Headwaters folks on, I kind of caught them up behind the scenes on what had been going on in my life and the period of time that I ended up homeless for a bit. And they all had said, "You should have called me."
And they meant
Now,
it.
I never thought about it because I hadn't talked to them in years, but all of them said, "You should have called me." great people.
Yeah. And they definitely would have been there.
Hmm.
That
I
when
know
we
that.
moved here, we were unable to really find our niche, as it were. We couldn't really find a community to be a part of, and we were not really welcome to a lot of places, my family and I. And we tried a few different churches and what have you, and just couldn't find a place to get to know people when we moved here from Florida. But doggone it, when we got to meet the Sautee folks over through the center and headwaters, man, our world just opened up to such a massive degree. And I mean, like you said, I feel like these will be lifetime friends that I could call for anything. And I hope I'll be the person, if they call me, that I'm that way for them.
Absolutely. I just, I hate that I hadn't thought of them at the time when I needed them, but I also hate to be the guy that comes out of the woodwork to be like, hey, I need some help.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of brings us to, talking about my bit of homelessness and stuff. That takes us a bit to what you do. You care to explain that a little bit for me?
I'd really would be happy to do so. I work with an agency called Ninth District Opportunity. It was a gift that I happened upon this opening about 5 years ago. My history is in finance. I was a Wall Street trader for about 15 years and uh, just got burned out. And we, as a family, moved up to the North Georgia mountains. I started a small business up here that we ran out of my basement. We were able to take care of ourselves financially, and this opportunity came up. And I've always been a person that really feels like I owe society more than what society gives me. And had the opportunity to take this job, and I did as the program planner, which basically means that I help with the grant writing. I help develop programs and get them, and then do the data reports to our grantors. Well, that's really not my bag when you get to know me. I'm more of a hands-on people guy, and in the community, I'm a talker. I'm a presenter. I'm the person that's in front of the group. I'm not usually a good person in a group. And so I approached my director and I said, "Hey, there's a grant out there right now for street outreach. It's a pretty sizable one. Do you mind if I try writing it and starting this program?" And she, of course, gave me access to it and said, "Sure." And doggone it, if they didn't give me the full grant, and which was a sizable grant, which allowed us to start from scratch here in the homeless community in Gainesville, Georgia, up here in the northeast part of the state. It's kind of our mecca of bigness in this community, as it were. It's our city in our rural region up here in northeast Georgia. And so when we first started, I was like many people. I didn't really understand homeless. I had some pretty strong opinions, but they were based just on what someone else told me, what I had heard on a radio station or whatever. But it wasn't based necessarily on fact or actual experience with the homeless. And so um, I really kind of just dove in with a naive desire to make a difference. And I don't want to just keep talking the whole time, but it's been an amazing experience in this short period of time. 2019, I think, is when we got our first grant. So we've got about into our third year. Uh, a way we kind of measure the homeless population. It's called the point in time homeless count. In 2017, in this city, we showed 30. I don't remember the exact number, but it was like in the mid 30s, which is still a pretty significant number. In 2019, they do it every 2 years. We had 65 or so. So it doubled. So we're already seeing a pretty significant increase in this. Well, because of COVID, it was bumped back a year, and we didn't do it again until 2022, at which time the number we were able to record was 314. Now it's increased by sixfold. Now, that sounds like an incredible increase. However, that number is still low because we had a monsoon that week when we did the count, and we couldn't get out to everybody, and we couldn't find everybody. I have on my desk a list of people that I've done assessments on, and I've got almost 500 names that I've worked with personally. And in this past week, I picked up 10 new people. So they keep coming. So it's a growing project, and I'd be glad to talk more about it.
Now, when you're doing this count, is that people in camps? Does it include? Well, I'm trying to just figure out, like, from a scale from couch hopping to a camp. Like, do you include all of those, or is it? Uh, at what point do the people make that list?
Okay. And thank you for asking that question, because that's a really insightful one. There are two definitions for homelessness that we have to abide by our grantors. There's the HUD definition, which is the one that we use and that our grants allow us to work with. And then there's what's called the McKinney-Vento definition, which is what the school system uses. It's my understanding that they are trying to merge these two definitions in Congress and make them one, and it would make everyone's life a lot simpler. I'll take a second and define the two, okay? McKinney-Vento basically is anyone who's couch surfing, doubled up, or staying in a hotel/motel on a short-term and or long-term basis. The reason, and this is what the school system uses, and there's a large homeless population in the school system. We work with the social workers directly in all these counties, and the numbers would frighten most people when they learn how many homeless children exist in school today. So that's the McKinney-Vento definition. If we're being technical, and that's why these two definitions exist, they're not technically homeless. They're vulnerable, and they could be homeless tomorrow, but for the night of tonight, they have a solid structure over their roof, over their head. So they're not homeless in the same sense that HUD uses. I don't think it's a definition that should be ignored, but I think the differentiation still has some validity. What we use in HUD is that the overarching term is anyone staying in a place not meant for human habitation. And so that can include an abandoned house or building, living in a vehicle, under a bridge, in a tent, pretty much anything in that, out in a field, under a tarp. So really someone who has no structure with electricity and running water would be considered homeless by our definition. And so you'll probably want to talk. I don't want to go on all day about this one definition, but
Don't worry, man.
I get rambling. So Steve, just jump in and yell at me. All right.
Hey, as long as you're not as bad as Tommy Chong was, I think we're fine. That boy jumped on here high out of his mind and talked about the Bible for an hour and a half without knowing what he was talking about.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Oh, it's fine. You can catch it if you want, but it's not for the weak of heart.
Okay.
But no,
as you know, I have a pretty weak heart these days, so I'm going to probably stay clear.
I'm sorry about that too. I heard the news, and I was prayers for you, man. But
thanks, man. I feel like I'm a new dude, and I feel rejuvenated, energized, and I actually feel 15 years younger. Really? For those who don't know, I had quadruple bypass, came out of left field, knocked me out, but I'm almost 50 pounds thinner, lighter, and I'm starting to be spunky again.
But the reason I said I don't mind you, going on rants about this is I'm very interested in learning about this kind of stuff. And I know that anybody listening to this specific episode is probably wanting to learn a little bit more too. And the reason I asked that specific question is I spent probably from the time I was 14 to 21, probably about 4 years of that, if not more, were spent couch hopping,
Mm.
never really knowing exactly where I was going to sleep the next night. A lot of the times I would end up at my buddy Jarrett Miller's parents' house. God bless his mom, Denise Miller, absolute angel, and nicest woman I've ever met. But I spent about 3 years just living there, kicked out of my own house as a teenager. And then once I became an adult, or whatever you want to say, I still don't see myself as an adult, but
Well, me either. So take comfort in that.
nice. But, I spent probably a couple years after that, out of high school, not really knowing where I was going to go because of just one situation or the other. And then for about 5, 6 years, I got an apartment and I maintained for a while. And then when COVID hit, everything just hit the fan, as it did with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And right as the layoffs began, my landlord decided he was going to raise the rent by $250. And, I thought, I'll figure something else out. Like, there's no way. And I didn't realize everything was going up in price. And by the time, out of principle, I decided to move out of there, I didn't have anywhere to go. And I developed a drinking problem alongside that, which
Mm-hmm.
homelessness and not having a job and having a really bad drinking problem don't really go well together. Well, they go well together in the sense
They go,
that,
unfortunately, too well together. Yeah.
yeah, but that took me to basically living in a shed behind my parents' house in the woods, sharing the shed at
Really.
night
Yeah,
with a
and what's
mangy
crazy, and
dog.
I'm sorry to cut you off, I didn't know any of this.
Really?
And we live in a small community here. I didn't see you every day, but I mean, we know where everybody's in and about, and I didn't know any of that.
I
I'm
didn't
actually
know.
hurting knowing how hard that must have been.
Yeah, I didn't know. Like, at the time, I was very. I don't think, even if I knew what you were doing, I don't think I would have reached out, whether it would have been pride or what. I didn't, I always thought somebody else had it worse off, which they always do. Somebody always has it worse off. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't reach out for help.
Yeah, pain's not a competition, buddy.
But so I ended up, just to quickly recap, I ended up in this shed in the woods, sharing it with like a mange ridden dog. And, my parents didn't know about the drinking issue. And then they found me drunk one night, and they're very old school Christian, to where if you're drunk, you're a threat, whether you're an angry drunk or not. So they thought, or like they tried to get in an argument with me. Not going to get into all that, but next thing I had been drinking 6 hours earlier, and they kicked me out. A gun was pulled, and I called the police because I was afraid for my little brother. And they ended up cuffing me because I drove about 200 feet, something like that. And after, blowing on the breathalyzer under the legal limit and all that. And once I got out of there, I had a friend say, you can either go to the Hickey House, which is a rehab around the Helen, Georgia area, Once again, with no one really knowing the extent of my drinking issue, but I ended up there, and I had decided the moment I hit that jail cell, I was done drinking. And that'll be 2 years ago Sunday.
Well, I want to just say I'm proud of you, man. That's a big commitment.
And thank you, thank you. And so I ended up in the Hickey house, not because I felt like I needed rehab, because I've quit with groups, Celebrate Recovery, AA, things like that before, but because I had nowhere to go. It was either that or in my car. And I got once I got there, I found out that I was allowed to leave the state. I called my cousins around Kentucky to see if anybody knew anyone looking for a roommate, because I was just desperate to get out of Georgia. I
Sure.
had burned all my bridges that I thought. I didn't think of to call any of the Saltee folks. I was just in my head, my immediate circle had collapsed. And luckily, one of my cousins heard my story, and she told me to pack my stuff and come up. And I was able to live with them for about a year until they had a kid. And, no hard feelings. We had a deal of a year, and I didn't get my stuff together in a year. So I ended up in my car and then in a homeless shelter. And then November, I got a place, and I've been in it since. And another thing that we can get into in a little bit here is just it's with the PTSD and stuff that I have from the things that I've gone through. It is hard for me to maintain a job in fast food and factories, which is about all that is hiring around here. So that's why it took me that long to get a place, because I had, and now I'm ranting. I've worked septic, I've worked radiator repair, I've worked tough jobs, but just after all of the crap that went down, it's now very difficult for me to be around too many people in person at once.
I respect that. It's not unusual either. One of the things that I do, and I have a tremendous team of people that work with us. We've built quite a following in the short time we've put together the homeless outreach up here. We've got a lot of churches and organizations and just volunteers that come and want to be a part of it. They've come and bought into the message, and they've gone out firsthand and found their place. You mentioned something, and if I can just talk about this for a second, I think it's really interesting. You mentioned about homelessness, and you mentioned about alcoholism. And I whenever I speak, one of the things that I talk about are the 5 myths of homelessness, and alcoholism is one of those. That alcoholism primarily is what puts a lot of our homeless in that situation, and that is a complete and utter falsehood. Alcoholism, while people drink, and hell, I drink, not as much as I used to, thank God. But alcohol is not what's driving people to homelessness. What's driving them to homelessness is usually, almost in the highest of percentages, is some sort of trauma or financial misstep or mishap. And that's where we see the overwhelming majority of people that end up in homelessness. However, everyone thinks that that's the situation. Now, I'm not saying that alcohol is not used in the homeless camp, and it's not a big part of being homeless. But alcohol, the way we see it, it's not a destructor of society in the sense that it drives people to this useless way. Well, it can. So let me preface that, because I'm not a theologian, and I'm sure as shit not a recovery expert. But what I see is alcohol is what keeps people from going insane that are homeless. It's a way of coping with the mess of life that people find themselves in, the lack of hope, the lack of opportunity, the feeling of unworthiness. It's a way to kind of drown out that noise that the head is constantly telling. That's what I hear from folks. And so,
Now,
I'm
let
sorry.
me throw this in here
Please,
that
sir.
as a recovery head type guy, it kind of goes along with the saying, alcohol is not the gateway drug, weed is not the gateway drug, cocaine, whatever, not the gateway drug. The gateway is trauma.
Yeah.
And it's how people cope with the trauma without any other healthier ways to do it, or without the coping skills. And it's not, drinking isn't bad in of itself, it's the excess that I had an issue with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I am just the person that when I have one beer, I am angry I do not have my fourth beer already. That's just me. Now, I'm not saying everyone's like that. I know, no, I'm an outlier in this situation. But when you find people dealing with this kind of trauma and rejection and not sure what is going to happen come tomorrow, a lot of people just need an escape.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, that escape, if you are in a better situation, can come from TV, it can come from video games, just a quick little escape from reality. But what is very easy to get a hold of when you have nothing else is some alcohol or
Mm-hmm.
something of the sorts.
Right. And we're actually starting this next week. I just got it confirmed this week that I just kind of had, every now and then I have what they call a brain fart. I just get this inspiration, usually happens about 3:30, 4 in the morning, and I have to get up and send myself an email because I'll never remember it if I don't, which really screws up my sleep patterns, by the way. So what I kind of had this vision, and I approached an organization about this. A lot of our homeless, that alcohol is their coping mechanism, that, like we mentioned, takes away the pain, it numbs them from all these issues of rejection and all the things we discussed earlier. They don't have the access to get to these recovery programs. They don't have transportation, and it's too far often for them to walk, because the recovery programs are usually in a place where people that can drive to are centralized, which is usually quite a ways away from homeless people in the camps in the woods where they live. So I said, what if we could bring a recovery meeting to the homeless, right? So we do a weekly event out in our homeless camp. We got a mobile showers that come out. We have churches and different organizations that bring food each week. We provide services and supplies to these folks. One of the things that the homeless tend to do is they just like to congregate. They like to gather, and they like to just relax, a time where they don't feel threatened, they don't feel vulnerable, and they don't feel like they're about to be arrested for one of a multitude of misdemeanors that tend to happen to the homeless unnecessarily. So
Community is very important
community
to
but
people, whoever.
yes, yes. So I just got talking with them. We sat and we had actually 3 tents set up yesterday, big tents. And so we had about 20 chairs, and we're all just kind of talking. And I had said this the week before, rather, that if we were able to get a recovery program out, people just talk about the alcohol, because they talk about it very freely, uh, or whatever it is they're using, marijuana. I don't give a shit about marijuana, but anyway, that's I guess I should, but I don't. Um, I said, if we could have a program out here, would you be interested in having that? And overwhelmingly, they said yes. So I reached out to an organization and spoke to their CEO, and they were at first going like, I've never heard of such a thing. That sounds really nutty. And I said, well, that's the way I roll. I'm not an in the box kind of dude. And they said, let's make it happen. So starting next week, we're going to have a homeless recovery meeting out in the woods here in Gainesville. We also have, we have nurses, and we'll have mental health counselors and food stamps advocates and all those things. But this is going to be a time for them to sit there for 1 hour or however long or the half hour. I don't know. I haven't, that's not really my thing, where they can chat about the things that are hurting. We may not be able to solve their problems, but we can make their lives a hell of a lot less miserable.
That's beautiful. And as groups go, I don't know what this one's going to look like, because I don't think there's really a sorry, I have a cat trying to break in right now.
How cool is that?
But there's not really a blueprint for what you're trying to do. But most recovery meetings I've been to, it'll be about a half hour of somebody speaking from their own experience, sharing their own story of, a little bit of the, well, here's some shit I did, and then here's how I got out of it. And then for 30 minutes it's that, and then for the next 30 minutes people usually will split up into groups, like smaller groups, to where they can talk about within that group what they've been going through this past week.
Mm-hmm.
And that really helps build a sense of community as well. Just openly sharing what you've been struggling with. And, it's not, it's frowned upon to give advice to somebody during that time. You just listen.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people will figure out the answer to their own problem during their little 5-minute share.
And that's the only way you're ever going to solve anything anyway. It's not something someone's going to say to you. It's something you have that, no shit. That's what or am I supposed to cuss on here, by the way?
Yeah, you're good. I'm toning it way down for you, man. It's good.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that's cool. You know what I want you to, are you back in Georgia now?
I am still in Kentucky, and
okay. Okay. I was trying to figure that part out.
I wish I could do something to help with all of this.
Oh, I was going to invite you to come to one of our meetings in the weeks ahead.
I would have loved that.
Here in Kentucky, that's a bit of a jaunt.
If you ever figure out a way for me to guest speak via Zoom, I will do that in a heartbeat.
All right.
If you need a guest speaker for AA, I would love to do that. I just can't do it in the traditional come to you way.
No.
The best choice I ever made was moving up to Kentucky.
I'm happy for you, man. I'm glad that, you've got a sparkle in your eyes and your voice has got some warmth in it. That you're back to the guy that I remembered.
Yeah. And for a while there, I was not. It took me about that whole year of living with my cousins to recover from everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so glad that I had that opportunity, because that doesn't just come to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Just a year to recover. And I'm really thankful for that. I'm thankful for my cousins. Great people, and just but I'm thankful for the stuff that you're doing, and I love the fact that you're thinking outside the box and getting like recovery meetings and all these things on top of like showers and stuff to these camps.
I mean, in recovery, the way we're using it, yes, it does mean helping with the alcohol or any other kind of addiction thing. But recovery is also kind of getting back into the mainstream of life, right? I mean, you've described your story. You've had a recovery program. You've got back into the mainstream of life. You were part of the invisible society for a period, as are homeless. That's what I call it. You literally are living in a parallel world to a world that you once knew and existed in, but you are not welcome into, and you don't know how to find entree back into it. And that's a painful, hurtful place that a lot of our homeless find. And they don't have like the mistakes I've made as a youth, even as an adult. And you've described some of yours and some of the other folks. We've had people that have been there to give us support financially, a room, encouragement, whatever it is. A lot of our people that we work with don't have that one. And it might just be they needed a month in somebody's bedroom. They might just have needed one payment to keep from getting evicted. It might be that they just needed money to help keep their car running so they didn't lose their job. It could have been, it's such a small thing that sends so many folks down that death spiral, we call it, that once it starts, you can't stop. And so I'm grateful you had that, man.
And up here, I don't know what it's like in Georgia because I didn't, like I said, I didn't reach out for help much. I just, I didn't think I was better than it. I always had this thought that somebody else needed that assistance more than I did.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's different programs that have helped me, make sure I'm not homeless again while I was searching for a job that I could handle with my PTSD. And I finally got one. And I'm just thankful for all the, I'm, I've had a lot more. I've had a better place. I've had this, I had that, and I wasn't happy when I was living in Cleveland, and it has nothing in itself to do with the area because it's a beautiful area. But I had a 2-bedroom apartment all by myself. I had food, gas money. I had, all the money I wanted for, um, alcohol, weed, whatever. And I wasn't happy.
Mm-hmm.
But now I have significantly less on paper, but I'm so much more happy.
Absolutely, buddy. And that's when you really come to realize what life is, right? I mean, again, I was a Wall Street trader. I had a ridiculously thick wallet, the best of everything, and it burned me out to the point where I almost couldn't take existing. I mean, it was just so much. It was made me become a person that I wasn't. And I couldn't stand living in my own skin. And I would literally come home and just have hate fest with myself of how much I feel like I'm just being such a fraud to what I'm supposed to be. And quick story, I went and I gave my CEO, I said, look, I'm going to give, this was after I was asked to come fly out to our corporate office and I had to fire the whole 40 some odd employees. And I was just like, that's just the way business works. And I was a person of influence and I was the one to do all these things. And so I flew out there, terminated all these employees, and I cried for days. It was not what I was cut out to be. I understood that this was a bottom line business and I understood this was a bottom line decision, but I'm not a bottom line guy. I'm a people guy and I couldn't handle it. And I went to my CEO and I gave him a year's notice. I said, look, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm quitting, I'm moving, and I'm going to do something else with my life. And that's how we ended up in North Georgia. And I was right on the verge of a mental breakdown. I don't have the wallet that I once had. I don't have the checking account that I once had. But dude, I sleep so damn good. I swear to God. I sleep with so much peace and tranquility, and my feet hit the ground every damn morning with so much enthusiasm and excitement, knowing today I can make such a a big amount
You're
of
good, man.
difference in other people's lives. I mean, is there a greater purpose than that? I haven't found it.
That's beautiful, man. I also like I just have a heart for helping people. If I had the patience for college, I would love to be like a case manager at a therapy place or something, just so I can use the knowledge that I have of different programs and assistance to help people. One of the reasons I wanted you on the show is I don't have a huge reach, but I wanted to get more people to hear about what you're doing.
Well, and I appreciate that. We actually met yesterday. This is a kind of an interesting, quick little tidbit. I know our time is somewhat limited here, so I'll be respectful. But we've got we're actually going to get the city to permit us to do a proclamation in November that we're actually going to be Homeless Awareness Week. Well, we're going to first off, we're going to have a memorial service on the square. We've already secured the speakers to come in. The mayor, we're hoping to come present this proclamation about the awareness of homelessness and its impact on the community and the community's responsibility back to these people. And then action opportunities where people can go out and be of service, helping people in poverty and homelessness. And if I could tell you where we've come from in the last 3 years in the community / city's response to homelessness, it would overwhelm you. And that's what we all did together. And that's what anyone can do if they really set their mind to it.
I love that. I love that, man. And, I don't want to push you for time or anything, but I do have a few more things that I'd like to
Fire away.
bring up. I just wanted to know, like, back to the recovery thing, and then I still wanted to hit on mental health for a little bit, if that's cool. But back to the recovery thing, do you know specifically what program you might be going through? Because I'll just go ahead and say it. I don't even know where I fit in with the church anymore. But my favorite recovery meetings are Celebrate Recovery. It's a Christian-based meeting, but the reason that I love it most is it is not Alcohol Anonymous. It is not narcotics. It is not cocaine. It is every hurt, habit, hang up.
I dig that. And I hope that's of the ilk that we end up being in. I don't know the specifics. This is a recognized organization in the community that has the respect. I got a take on that. Unfortunately, the church has got a pretty shitty reputation in the homeless community.
It really
is
does.
not a sentence that usually goes well together. Church shitty. Anyway, it's because everything that seems to be done in dealing with poverty and the homeless and people that are vulnerable is done with a hook in it. A hook in it to try to draw more parishioners or get more notches on the belt of getting more people baptized or followers, or they attend a Bible study. And so one of the things that we do, and I actually made a note to try to make sure I speak on this, is that we don't permit anyone that works with us to come and use this as a platform to enhance their church in growth or numbers or percentages. We're here to serve. Faith without works is dead. And that's the way I look at it. That's a little scripture thrown right at you. I don't know if that's context or not, but it makes a hell of a lot of sense to me. So
Yeah.
we take that very seriously. And the problem with a lot of the homeless face is people will come in and they'll offer something, food, a blanket, a jacket, sodas, whatever, under the stipulation that you sit through this, that you accept this, that you accede to this prayer, that you hang out with us for a little bit, you attend a church, you attend a Bible, all of these things. And I'm not saying any one of those things is wrong. I'm just saying that if a man is hungry, a loaf of bread is the only Bible he's going to read. That's a Gandhi quote. So we start there. We meet the need. And then if there's an opportunity for the Jesus thing or the Islam thing or the Buddhist thing, God bless each and every one of you, but we're going to do that after in another location, another
Absolutely.
part of what we do, because we want to differentiate and make sure that we're just there because of them. And we're not trying to get anything from them. We're here to give to them.
Because what what hurts a lot is when somebody is coming to help in the name of whoever, we'll say Jesus for now, but whoever, name of a church, specific church, or whatever, and they just fall flat on their face because they are not what they preach. No one is going to be able to be what they're preaching. And inevitably, people end up getting hurt and they associate that thing, that place, that person with that hurt, is what I've seen in my own personal life. That's why I told you I don't know where I fit in with the church, but I do like at least that one program for the fact that,
It's all
and I wish,
encompassing.
yeah, I wish there were
I
more
think that's cool.
programs like that where, let's say I'm going to AA and I have 2 years sober, but I slip up and do something like, let's say, smoke a joint or something, which I'm not doing, would not do on probation, not going to do any of that. But if I did, they would expect me to give up my whole 2 year chip. Now, in this recovery meeting I was talking about, you get a chip for everything. They celebrate everything. Your
Hmm.
2 years without alcohol, that's great. We'll deal with the other thing.
I think that's actually the. I don't claim to know a lot about scripture, but that sure does seem to be a lot about the way I understood this Jesus talked about things. You know, let's just keep working forward. We'll deal with these other things, but we don't have to cancel everything and say we got to start. I like that. And I hope that's a part of it. I do.
I like that too. And, hopefully that's something that gets worked in there, because a lot of people will try to, like, it's a big statistic within the recovery. And I'm sorry to keep going on about recovery, but it's a big statistic that if you try to quit smoking cigarettes, you'll relapse on everything.
Can I tell you about one of the programs we have in the area? I
Yeah.
won't mention any names, but it won't be hard to deduce who it is. We have an organization here in the city that is all about, it's a recovery program. And so it's drug and alcohol treatment, as it were, recovery. And it is faith based, which is fine. Again, there's God bless each and every one of them that works and is important to people. However, their issue is that if they test you daily, I shit you not, for nicotine, and if you get caught one time, your ass is on the street.
That's,
It's an in-home, where they actually come in and they stay there, and they're good people and they do good work, but there's one hill that they die on. I don't grasp it. I don't get it. It's
yeah.
like, please, of all the things to sacrifice somebody for, recovering people in cigarettes. I mean, please do a little research before you get involved in these things, right?
Yeah. It's like, I've gone through a lot. I'm still going through, I'm still getting my life back together. And that's the last thing on my list, is giving up cigarettes, because that can wreck you. It's such a horrible, I wish I never smoked. I wish I never started it. Just because, it helps with anxiety for about 30 days. And then after that, it gives you anxiety and you freak out if you don't have it. But, like I said, people trying to quit cigarettes, they'll relapse on the whole damn thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but
Just
enough
like I
about
said, just not a
recovery.
hill I'm going to die on.
There's one more thing I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, but
You said counselors, therapists, stuff like that. What are we doing to help the mental health side of things, which is a huge deal
it is.
and very important to me, having PTSD, depression, anxiety, all of that good stuff?
So, uh, another one of my myths that I use when I do my 5 myths of homelessness is that everyone is mentally ill and crazy, and it's nothing but one flew over the cuckoo's nest in the woods. Okay. And that is far, far from the case. Now, here's what I stand by. Mental illness is a challenge in the homeless community, like it is in the non-homeless community. Unfortunately, many of our homeless don't always have access to their medication. Were they to take it on a regular basis, they would have the opportunity to have the same stability mentally as potentially you or I. I'm not saying I'm the most stable guy in society, but we would have that, they would have that same opportunity. You know, a lot of folks in society take medication to stay stable. And I think it's a gift that that's an option for folks. Okay. The other thing that happens is our homeless lose, and this is another thing we'll talk about in my talk, is that they don't have identification. They get stolen, it gets destroyed, it gets lost, what have you. And without identification, you can't get access to medical services. So we do have a program that helps restore their identification for them and get it back. So, and then there's not always access to medicine. We do have a free clinic that a lot of our folks can use as long as they don't have Medicaid. If they have Medicaid, then we have to get them to one of our providers in that regard. And that means they got to worry about copays potentially, or Medicare or Medicaid. So those are some issues about medicine and psychological medicine. However, even those that A, have it, and B, would consider taking it on a regular basis, many choose not to because it makes them unstable. It makes them kind of numb. It takes away their edge they feel. And when you're living in a homeless situation, you're having to depend on a reptilian type mind. And you're always vulnerable, and you have to always worry about threats of violence or theft or what have you. So they feel like they don't have the ability to protect themselves, so they don't take it. And finally, another issue about medicine, psychological medicine, is they just forget. They don't have calendars. They don't watch TV and know that 7:30 during Jeopardy is when I'm supposed to take my medicine. They don't have the ability to have routine like that. So things don't come naturally. Their phones are seldomly charged on a regular basis. And when they are, they don't always have Wi-Fi. And when they have Wi-Fi, they don't always have minutes. So it's a complicated issue with them trying to keep up with calendars.
And who are we kidding? People with their quote unquote lives put together, or whatever you want to call it, they forget to take their meds. I forget to take my meds some days.
I forget, right? Now that I'm a person that has to take medication twice a day, I forget. I have to get up in the middle of the damn night a couple of times here recently and say, shit, I forgot to take my pills again, and I don't want to have another heart attack, so let's do it. And I wanted to also mention this, and I get a little long-winded, but I think it's important to note, medicine is stolen a lot, which is then resold, which is a way of people having access to funds. And so medicine that is stolen is hard to replace because you're thought of differently when you go back too soon to get your medicine. Doctors have a little bit of a challenge with that, most of the time, rightfully so. The females have a big problem with medicine being stolen. And, this is kind of an insensitive way to say it, but the only place they can keep their medicine is they put it inside themselves. And that's where it's kept. And that way it's not stolen from them on a regular basis. Because otherwise, pretty much everything is subject to theft in the homeless community. And it's not always the homeless that are stealing from each other, but it's people that are housed, that are poor and don't want to work, are the ones that are robbing the most vulnerable and making their lives a living hell.
I help out at a food bank in town here in Moorhead, Kentucky. And they helped supply a man with a tent who had become recently homeless. And if that tent wasn't stolen from him within 2 days of them giving it to him.
You know,
Very
that's the
sad.
reason why I was speaking with a gentleman yesterday, and he said, "Look, I really need help with work." I said, "You know," and of course that's part of what we do. We try to match them up, and one of the things he said is that, but I have to work first shift, and we have a lot of manufacturing opportunities here, so that actually works pretty well. And our homeless are not afraid to work. The overwhelming majority do work. And that's an important fact. That's another one of my myths that I bust. But of those that are working, they need to work the first shift. They can't work second shift. They can't work third shift. They can't work overtime because if they're gone when people aren't there, they're stuck to watch their tent. They get things stolen from them. And so it's just one of the things is that I just keep losing everything when I work on second shift. I can't keep anything because people just come through, take all my stuff, and it's gone.
So sad
I
to
can't combat that.
barely have anything and to lose it again.
That's right.
Well, Mike, what information do we need to plug here in case anybody listening to this knows somebody that needs to reach out or needs assistance? Uh,
Well, we are
what do
limited
they
in
do?
our reach, so I want to be mindful of that. There's only so many of us, myself and the people that work with us that do what we do. Uh, and our own numbers now are ones that we can't keep up with. But
Gotcha.
I want you to go, if nothing else, go to our Facebook page, which is Street Exit of North Georgia. And now we've become hip. We've got someone helping us with our social media. So now we learned the difference between a page and a group on Facebook. So we've also got a page and a group. So we have Facebook of North Georgia, and then we have the Street Exit Chronicles, which is the one that I guess we can link to everything, which we didn't know we were supposed to do, and thankfully we've learned that. However, we also have a podcast, and I would invite anyone that's interested. I don't have a big bank of volumes yet. I think we've only done 14 episodes to date. We're not quite as sophisticated as Stirvin here, but we are adding more all the time. Again, Street Exit Chronicles. We're on Spotify and Anchor. So we'd love to have you there. There's a lot of organizations in everyone's community that are willing to help. Find out who they are. Put yourself in a place of being vulnerable and go out there and be with them and learn about what's going on in your community.
All right. Thank you for coming on, Mike. And I just want to add on, just love each other, people. If you can help somebody, help somebody, you know. And if you can't, don't overextend yourself. But we're here so not everybody lives and dies all alone, you know?
That's right.
Well, this has been The Confound Millennial, starring Steven Stirvin Michaels and featuring Mike of the Street Exit Chronicles. Where did I put that outro video?